Well, thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Devin. I'm with NOFA New Jersey, and today we're joined by the team from Ambrook. Ambrook is providing software solutions and support for farmers to better get a grip on their financial accounting. You know, when we're in the fields, when we're busy, the last thing we want to do is take out our notebook and write down, allocate expenses, take photos of receipts and get our phones all muddy. So this software could really prove to be beneficial for a lot of our community members. And we're just really excited to be able to put more tools in the farmer's tool belt. So Atticus, if you would go ahead and take the steering wheel, we can't wait to see this demo.
Awesome. I have the steering wheel. Thanks, Devin. Great to have all of you here and looking forward to hearing from all of you, perhaps watching the recording at some time in the future. My name is Atticus Graven. I'm, among other things, I'm the customer success representative and manager at Ambrook. So that means I have a lot of touch points with our customers who are, of course, farmers across the United States. And so I'm really excited to give you this presentation, give you just an idea of what's going to come down. I'm going to introduce myself and Ambrook for a few minutes. And then we've kind of got two things on the docket. We're going to go through, just generally speaking, what we're calling enterprise accounting best practices, and we'll kind of get into a bigger definition there. But enterprise accounting is basically knowing not just on a whole if your farm is making or losing money, but knowing which parts of your farm, which business lines of your agricultural operation are really your money makers, and which ones maybe you should leave behind. And then we got the back half of the call here to show a demo of the Ambrook software. Really excited about that. Questions, feedback are very welcome, whether now on this call or later. And for those of you who are on this call, please absolutely feel free just to go ahead and interrupt me and ask a question while we're on the slide. We do have time for questions at the end, but I find it's much easier to get the question answered, and we're all kind of in the same place if you just go ahead and interrupt me. So please have no compunction about doing that. And once we're done with the software demo, we do have some time for questions about either of these topics. So yeah, really excited to just dive right in. A little bit about me, a little bit about Ambrook. Like I said, I've been at Ambrook for 2 years. I kind of lead customer success. I also maintain the Ambrook funding library, which may be something you've seen before if you've been Googling around for grant or loan opportunities in agriculture. We do keep that updated every week with kind of what grants are available, when they're due, what information you need to apply for them. I don't have a formal education in accounting, but I like to say I've been taught by kind of the best people at it, which are those farms accountants and advisors out there in the world who are already doing this, and they've found systems that work for them. So, you know, we kind of have the best practices, the thing we're striving for, the vision, and we also have, you know, what it actually takes to answer your questions on the ground. And I like to think I've been trained kind of from both sides of that during my time at Ambrook. So really excited to share that knowledge with y'all. Devin gave Ambrook a pretty good introduction earlier. Who we are is really a company that is building software solutions for farmers. And the first big thing that we found to be necessary is a strong financial bookkeeping and back office suite of services. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So let's get right into enterprise accounting. Before we do, kind of need to ask a really basic question. I'm sure many of you think this is a question you do know the answer to, and you do, but it's worth going back to basics just to start with. And that question is, why do we do record keeping, aka bookkeeping? Why do we do that at all? And for most people, it's the threat of the IRS. Basically, it's this thing on the left, right? Taxes. You have to do taxes. You can't not do taxes. If you don't do your taxes, you're gonna not have a good time when the IRS comes knocking on your door. So you need to do record keeping for that. And once you're doing record keeping for that, you really want to do good record keeping because it protects you in the case of an audit. If the IRS does come knocking and they want to know why you put the numbers that you put in, the better your records are, the better you're able to answer them. And of course, the better your records are, the more sort of information your accountant has to maximize your deductions, minimize the taxes you're paying. And that's all to the good. We all want to do that. And I'm sure we've all had that conversation with our CPA where they're like, I really need to know X, Y, and Z so that I can reduce your liability and have you pay less taxes this year. And that's great, but that really only happens once a year. So, and it's hard to really sort of build discipline around something that only benefits you once a year. If you're here at this webinar, I bet you're more interested in the second reason, and that's to know about your business, to grow your business, to know how you spend your money, know how you make your money, know if you are making money, and of course, use that information to kind of change things. If you're not making money here, you're spending too much money there, how can you change your behavior, change your business to get towards your goals? And I think it's worth pausing and reflecting on that for a moment, because for some people, the goal is very clear. You just want to make more money, grow, make more money, grow. And that's great. But for some people, it's maybe a little bit different. Some people, it's, I want to be less stressed. It's, I want to spend more time with my family. It's, I want to, pay off my debt is a really great goal for some people. And no matter what your goal is there, getting a handle on your financial situation, getting a picture of financial situation is what's going to help you make progress towards that goal. So that's why we do any record keeping at all. And if you are doing that at all, why not put a little more effort in to get a lot more value? And that a lot more value is what we call enterprise accounting. Now, Ambrook didn't invent this term. This has been around for a while. It's common in all industries, not just farming. But basically, the premise is this: farms, ranches, all sorts of agricultural operations are multi-enterprise business. Enterprise just meaning one of the ways in which you make money. So a very common example is a livestock operation that also grows its own feed, because guess what? If you don't need all that feed, you're going to sell that feed. Or a value-added production where maybe you grow fruit, and if you can't sell all the fruit, you make jam. That's two different business lines. So many examples across agriculture where you have many different lines of business, many different enterprises, and enterprise accounting comes in and just means tracking your incomes and expenses specifically towards the line of business that incurred them, excuse me. And why is that important? Well, that's important because if you know which enterprise made the money and which enterprise spent the money, you end up with a picture of which of these are the winners and which one of these are the losers. And maybe you shouldn't be growing your own feed to feed your cattle. Maybe you're better off just buying from the store. Or maybe jam is your biggest seller and you should stop selling fresh fruit and focus all on jam because it's making you more money. I mean, these are the kind of things that you find out when you do enterprise accounting, not just regular sort of bookkeeping and accounting for tax purposes. And this is it. This is the payoff. So we're going to come back and dig into this a little bit deeper later. But this is kind of what everyone wants to get to at the end of the year of enterprise accounting. They get to say, hey, not only is my farm level net income positive, but when I look at my corn, my vegetables, my cattle as these separate enterprises, I get to see, which is making more money, which is making less money, what should I focus on? And like I said, we'll come back to that. But for now, we're going to go through a few principles that kind of Ambrook has gathered from all of the experts and farms that we've worked with, and also from sort of the first principles of what are the practices that make good enterprise bookkeeping, and also just good bookkeeping in general. And I'm going to go through these, and then we're going to pop over and see a demo of Ambrook to see how we kind of built those into the product itself. All right, so number one, and this is a really interesting one because a lot of people just tell us it's just words, what does it matter? But we found it's very, very important for a chart of accounts to be in the words of you, in the producer. And why is that? It's because familiarity with your chart of accounts makes bookkeeping faster and reduces errors. It's also about communication with your accountant. You may think your accountant set you up with a chart of accounts that they gave you at the beginning of your relationship with them. You should stick to that. But actually, your accountant's very smart. They can figure out where things go. You're the one who's in the chart of accounts day in, day out. Those words should match up to the way you think about things, not them, because you're the one who's in it a lot more. Here's an example that we heard early on in our business. A client's accountant made them an account called off-road fuel, because that's one of the things on the Schedule F talks about, what fuel is used for off-road, what fuel is used for on-road, because that goes towards a tax credit. But the client was always miscategorizing this purchase because in their mind, they called it dyed fuel. When they go and they fill up, they're looking for dyed fuel. And when they go to their QuickBooks or to their spreadsheet or wherever it is to do their bookkeeping, they're thinking about dyed fuel, they can't find it, they tag it as something else, and the accountant has to go through and re-tag it later. Just change that. The farmer should just have dyed fuel in their chart of accounts, so what they're looking for matches what they're thinking about, And the accountant will adjust. It's not difficult for the accountant to say, I know what dyed fuel is. It's what I, as the accountant, think of as off-road fuel. And I only look at this once a year, so it's really fine. This is a really, really critical one to enterprise accounting. Associate an expense with an enterprise if and only if that expense would go away if you stopped the enterprise. It's a lot to unpack, but it's worth doing so. So the idea here is that you're going to have a bunch of expenses coming in. And when you're doing enterprise accounting, you're going to be tempted to really, really divide every single dollar up into your enterprises. And you should be thinking that, but it's more difficult than you might think when you get into the specifics of it. And this is a rule to kind of say, all right, how should I categorize any particular expense? Would this expense go away if I stopped doing this enterprise? So let's go through some examples. Example number one, pretty easy. Chicken feed goes to my chicken enterprise. Why is that? Well, if I wasn't breeding chickens, if I wasn't raising chickens, I probably wouldn't buy a chicken feed. So very easy to say, if this enterprise went away, if chickens went away, I wouldn't buy chicken feed. Therefore, chickens are the enterprise for this expense. Example number two, a mortgage payment. This is kind of a universal one. Most of us tend to have a mortgage. If you stopped chickens, or if you stopped cattle, or if you stopped vegetables, you're not going to have to stop paying your mortgage. So that should not go to any of your enterprises. You should go to what we call overhead, or some sort of general catch-all category that's not allocated directly to one of your enterprises. And here's one that's somewhere in the middle, and one that might be more difficult. Example number three, we have pasture land rent. You're renting this land so that you can run your cattle on it and have them pasture. Very easy for me to say in this hypothetical example, that should obviously go to cattle. If you stopped running cattle, you might let that lease lapse, and therefore you would not be paying this expense. However, it gets more tricky, right? What if you're using that land? You might keep that lease and do some other kind of enterprise. None of these things are sort of the hard and fast rules that we want them to be. You kind of have to consider it in the context of your business, what you're going to do with that business. And so I would probably tag pasture and ranch to cattle until such day as you think, oh, I could actually use this land for something else. And then it becomes sort of a split between enterprises. So this is, if there's anything to take away from today's presentation in terms of enterprise accounting, this is a really important point that a lot of folks struggle with in terms of, I know I want to be putting all of my expenses towards my enterprises, but how do I decide which enterprise they go to? And sometimes there's corner cases. How do I think about that? Well, try and think about what would happen to that expense if the enterprise went away, and that should help. This is one that is near and dear to my heart, and it's use other categories sparingly. It's very easy. We've all done it. End of a long day. I just bought something. I don't really know where to put it. Doesn't happen that often. Doesn't fit into any categories that I really think about frequently. I'm just going to put it into other expenses or miscellaneous. That's okay. It happens. But every time that happens, you're actually missing out on an opportunity to learn something about your business. And the more it happens, the more you use that other expenses category or other income category, whatever it is, the worse that gets in terms of your ability to answer questions. So this is this also goes back to our first principle about the chart of accounts being in your own word. If you've built your chart of accounts in your own words, you can add specific categories for expenses that are predictable, even if they're infrequent. Our example here is like maybe only twice a year do you actually have to pay for parking at the farmer's market, but you know what that is. That's not an other, that's not a miscellaneous, that's not an unknown. You can put that into your chart of accounts and you can have it there for when you need it. And if you aren't sure, take the picture of it, save a receipt, note down anything relevant to that decision so that when you can sit down, think about it later, you can figure out what the category is, or even ask your accountant about it, ask your advisor, ask your CPA. Very similar to what I just said there. Record the transaction the moment it occurs or as soon as possible. So note what happens when it happens, save the receipt. Even if you are out in the field, kind of like keep that receipt, jot it away, put it into your pocket, try and check back in on it later. You will never have more information about the transaction than the moment it occurs. And we want to kind of keep that context with you as you go to your bookkeeping. Number 5, consider what Ambrook calls internal transfers, but this is a concept that exists outside of Ambrook, which is sort of what is the relationship between the enterprises on your farm and what happens when you transfer value from one to another. Again, I'm going to use the example of a rancher that raises cattle, but also grows crops to feed them. If he doesn't consider the cost and the value of the crops that he's grown when he sells the cattle, then the profitability of that cattle will be inflated. And the profitability of his crops will be unknown since he never sells them, but he definitely could. And honestly, when we see farms with this setup, they often do, right? Sometimes you have some left over, sometimes you have to buy more in. So an internal transfer is one of the names it goes by, and it's a way to recognize a movement of value from one enterprise to another, even though no cash has changed hands, right? So the example here in this picture here is saying, I've grown some feed, it's a mix of corn and alfalfa or whatever you have, and I could sell it for $1,000. This amount that I have, I could sell it for $1,000, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to feed it to my cattle. So what happens is I'm going to mark a revenue, an internal revenue to my feed, and I'm going to mark an internal cost to my cattle. So now I've kind of squared away that opportunity cost that happens, even though no money is leaving or entering my pocket. I am the cattle producer, I am the feed producer. But when I look at my books and when I evaluate my enterprises, I'm actually seeing the value provided by the feed and the cost incurred by the cattle. So this one's almost more of a way of thinking than a suggestion. And we do have a way to do this in Ambrook, which I will show you. But no matter what your system is, you should be thinking about, am I hiding a cost? Am I hiding a value? Because it's sort of just being fed through my enterprises in that way. And finally, number 6, and this one's really, really important. This one we've seen kind of come up time and time again, especially in agriculture, where we do have a bunch of family farms where different family members own different parts of the farm. We do have issues of liability where maybe you want to keep your cattle business separate from your meat business, separate from your trucking business, because if something goes wrong, you want liability protected from them. You might have multiple LLCs. We see these structures all the time. In terms of succession, it's really important to have those structures really ironed out and separate. And so we just have some rules here that help with bookkeeping, certainly, and it makes things cleaner, but they're really just about legal entity hygiene. And those are, you really want to keep separate bank accounts. You don't want to mix, if you can help it, you don't want to mix the funds of one entity with the funds of another entity. You really don't want to mix it with your personal bank account as well, although we know that happens, and there are ways to do that in a way that is okay. And if you ever send money between the entities, you want to rigorously document why that happened. So if your trucking entity needs a loan from your cattle entity because you need cash flow to work out, that's fine. You are the owner of all these things. You can do that, but really rigorously document what happened there, why it happened, so that if you ever have to come back and ask a question about were these entities independent, you have a paper trail to tell whoever is asking that indeed it was. So these are the six practices that we think are really important. And again, we have this payoff here of a enterprise level profit and loss. And I just want to make sure that it looks like my screen is still sharing. Are you seeing a spreadsheet here? Awesome. Yeah, and this is a really simplified demo data version of this, but you can see what you end up with is your income broken out by which of your enterprise earned it, your cost of goods sold broken out by which of your enterprise incurred it. You have your overhead category, which is probably mostly just empty unless you have things like mortgage or like we talked about earlier, which should not go to any one of these. And then you can really reason about, oh, wow, the profit margin on my cattle is way higher than the profit margin on my corn. Maybe I should focus more on them. Maybe I should hire a new cattle match or expand my herd. And hey, maybe I should actually think about whether I should grow corn at all. Obviously, these are really nice gross profit percentages here in the demo data. We'd all love to have that. But if you come down to the net income here, maybe it's a little more realistic. Oh, vegetables really underperforming relative to other things. And that's exactly where you want to end up. You want to end up in a place where you can evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of your businesses, business on these enterprise axes and say, what should I do more of? What should I do less of? How can I meet my goals? Awesome. So I am going to switch over and come back to the slide deck in a minute. If anyone has any questions, now would be a great time to jump in with them. Otherwise, we will continue. Sorry, I just have to reshare. All right, I think we are back. So if this is so great, why doesn't everyone do it? Why is it hard to do? Because it is hard to do, and not just for the sort of reasons we talked about in terms of making decisions about what expenses and incomes go to what enterprises. It's just a very difficult thing to layer onto an already difficult thing, which is bookkeeping. A lot of people don't even like doing that. Adding another layer of complexity can be difficult, but why don't other systems do this? So QuickBooks actually does, and I know QuickBooks is common out there. So QuickBooks has a concept for enterprises that is called classes. But of all the people that we've met on QuickBooks, all the farmers we met of QuickBooks, very few kind of have it properly set up. It's very finicky to set up. It's very finicky to maintain. And even those who do report back to us that it's hard to get the answers they want from the reports in the ways that QuickBooks gives them to them. Though we have some people who have set it up beautifully, it can work very well. And Excel, we love Excel. I love Excel personally. Anything can be done in Excel. It's an amazing tool. It's sort of magic when you think about it. But the problem is it takes a lot of manual entry work and it doesn't scale. So every time you add a new product, add a new category, add a new tag, you're kind of in there manually updating things, very easily to type in the wrong thing, fat finger something, it breaks very easily. And of course, at a certain amount of data, if you're doing thousands and thousands of transactions a month, a year, the spreadsheet will just fail and it will be very slow. And we've all, well, I've had the experience of a spreadsheet with 500,000 rows, and it's not a fun experience, at least not yet. So it's hard to do for various reasons. It's hard to layer another layer of complexity on top of bookkeeping, especially when people are still kind of getting comfortable with that. And it's hard to do in Excel just because things end up breaking. But honestly, it is our recommendation. If you were just getting started, if you are small, if you just want to see how things are working, Excel is a great place to start. It's a great place to get started thinking about what your chart of accounts are and what you want to be doing, what your enterprises are. And many people do just start from that. So bottom line here, you probably saw this coming. We built Ambrook to make it easier. We've tried to make it easier with Ambrook. Enterprise accounting is part of the DNA of Ambrook from pretty much day one. And as you'll see in the demo, a lot of the choices we made and a lot of the options we make available to the user in the software are based on getting you to that enterprise level P&L in a way that's easy, in a way that's painless, in a way that lets you kind of make those decisions easily and honestly spend less time, get back out to the field and keep doing what you want to be doing. So gonna jump over to a demo of the software now and give you an idea of how Ambrook handles this.
Hey, Atticus.
Yep.
Just curious, I know your focus is on farms, but could this Ambrook software be applied towards small food businesses? I mean, it sounds like you'd want to be enterprise accounting for any business that you own, not just farms, even if your focus is on farms.
Yes, absolutely. So we did build it for farms in the first instance, and you'll see kind of some flavors of that in the app, especially with the funding library. But you're absolutely right. A lot of businesses that have multiple lines of business want to be enterprise accounting. And we've actually started onboarding a few farm adjacent businesses, food businesses, sort of farm consulting businesses that have similar workflows have been onboarded onto Ambrook, and they've been finding it to be useful to them as well. So that's a great question, and thanks for asking it, Devin. And let's jump into the demo unless anyone else has any questions. To share my screen again. Just to here we are. Okay. So this is Ambrook. This is what we call the ledger. This is sort of the heart and soul of Ambrook. This is where all of your transactions come in. Now, if you're on Excel or if you're on older versions of QuickBooks Desktop, you may be used to actually manually entering in every single one of your transactions, what it is, how much it is, how to categorize it, etc. We really try to reduce that by connecting directly to your bank account. So if you're on Ambrook, we find out what banks you're working with, you connect directly to them through a connector service called Plaid. And that means every time you wake up in the morning, you check your Ambrook app, the transactions that happened yesterday are right here in the ledger waiting for you to be categorized. So in this example, you can kind of see we've got a credit card, we've got a credit line of credit, we've got a bank account, and all of these transactions come into the ledger, and then all you have to do is tag it. So this is where our enterprise accounting gets started, right? So we've got the category tag. That's your pretty typical, what is this transaction? In this case, this is a income transaction for retail sales. We're tagging that. And we want to tag the enterprise. Like I said, it's a first party idea. You want to make sure we know what enterprise, for every income and expense, what enterprise is getting it. In this case, it's a sale of chickens. So the enterprise is chickens. You click tag and you're done. And in this by having this sort of two-axis system of category and enterprise separate, you really get the full picture of your data where, I will have retail sales of a bunch of different things, but I will know which of those things were chickens because of this enterprise tag. When I was talking about entity hygiene earlier, we also have that tag here. So if you do have multiple different family members of their entities owning different parts of the farm, this entity tag is going to be your way of separating that out. Or if you have multiple different LLCs for different purposes, it's going to be the same thing. And our hope is that your bookkeeping time is really just spent here in the ledger, where you apply your tags, your category, your enterprise, your entity. We have ways for you to automate that. You can tag multiple things at the same time. If you see that they all should be tagged to the same thing, you can create, oftentimes you'll go to a store and you'll get a bunch of things, and so you can kind of itemize those things by uploading the receipt and tag them all individually if they need different tagging. You can also do things like split a transaction between two different categories if need be. We've seen that necessary as well. So we really try to make this both really easy to use, easy to access, and flexible, because we know things happen. Things we never predict to happen will happen, and we want you to be able to represent the truth of your business here on the Ambrook ledger. I will go ahead and tag that.
Atticus, can you add categories on the fly in there?
Absolutely, yeah. Let me show you how that works. So yeah, let's go. Let's find a good example here. That's an invoice, which we'll get to in a second. So that's not a good example. Sure, Comcast is a good example, right? I want to call this utilities. This one is split. Let me unsplit this. Tag that. I think this should work. Yeah. So I've got this tag. I've got a tag with the wrong thing here on Federal Highway Test. What I want to do, utilities, and see, I've got this up here, utilities, which is part of my current chart of accounts. But I actually can find a lot of suggestions in this sort of lower category with the big plus sign to add something to my chart of accounts. So I may want to add phone service for Comcast for chart of accounts. It's going to be there. We have on the Ambrook side, we have sort of a really long, big, pretty exhaustive canonical list of things you might want to add. And then, of course, if you want to add something that's bespoke or special, we can add that for you as well.
Cool. And you can split up between entities there as well?
Yes. Great question. So here on the entity side, you have that same option, split it. 50-50, whatever you need there.
Right. Like that cable bill is a perfect example, right? You want to allocate half to one
Totally.
entity, one half to another. So cool.
Yeah, half to each entity, or 20% to personal, 40%, exactly. A lot of folks have kind of, even if they only have one entity, we've seen a lot of folks have their farm entity and their personal entity here and use that tag to kind of keep those things really nice and separated as well. Thank you, that's a great question. All right, the last thing I will point out here, because really one of our big goals is to save you time, is that we can automate almost all of these things. So Comcast is a really good example. Let's go back and find that. Here, Comcast, I know it's going to happen every month. It's probably going to come in with the same description every month, and it's going to be tagged to utilities every month. Well, this time when I tag it, I'm going to say create automation. And it's going to tell me, okay, you want to tag every time it says Comcast with utilities, with these enterprises, with this entities. And I'm going to say yes. And now going backwards into the past and going forward, whenever something comes in called Comcast, it's going to automatically be tagged. And hopefully, the more you do this, kind of the less time you have to spend on your bookkeeping, with still getting all the results in terms of benefits of your data being really nice and clean. One of our farms that we have on the platform right now, actually 60% of his transactions are all tagged by these automations. So he's been really excited about that and saving time. So let's go ahead and jump straight to the fun part here. Let's jump straight to the payoff. And I showed you one version of the payoff earlier in terms of having a report that gives you your profit and loss by enterprise. Well, we have a version of that that's live in the app, and I'm just going to go to the last year because it's kind of got a whole year of data, which is nice to see. And that is your analytics tab. And right here is sort of the top line number. You can kind of keep a live eye on that enterprise level profit and loss. So for all your work in the tagging, for all your work in the categorizing, for all your thinking about the enterprise, what should go where, this is the payoff. You get to find out, wow, okay, apples are making way more money relative to cost than chickens. Everything's going well. How can I make these decisions? And I don't just have to wait till the end of the month, at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year to see this. I get to have this live in my hand whenever I want it, as long as my categories are up to date. So this is kind of one of the things that we love to onboard folks on the platform and get them to the point where they have a good chunk of data to come and look and see how they're doing, because this is what everyone wants to know, how everyone wants to answer questions about their business. And you also see here, we kind of have some light budgeting and goal features where not only do we know what expenses you actually incurred, but if you want to set a budget and say, I have so much set aside for wages, so much set aside for feed, grain, and meal, we show you how you're doing relative to those budgets, and on the income side, relative to those goals. All right. There are a few more aspects here. That is sort of the bookkeeping core of Ambrook, but there are a few more aspects here that really help make it easy to follow. And I'm just noticing, no, sorry, I was just seeing if there's a question in the chat. It was not.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, please.
Do you integrate with point of sale systems where if you
Yes.
ring up, okay, I sold $50 in carrots today and $100 in potatoes, can you automatically tag it in here?
Yes, it will. So currently the main one that we integrate with is Square, but actually that we have a service provider that makes it easy to integrate with almost all of the main point of sale systems. We've just started with Square because that's what most of our users are on. But yes, it's not going to show in this demo account, but basically in the same way we would connect to your bank account, we connect to Square. So whenever a transaction clears Square, that comes onto the ledger. It says, whatever your item names in Square were, those get carried over, the totals get carried over, and then you would set your automations to say, whenever I see a bunch of radishes from Square, tag that to, retail sale, radishes my enterprise, etc. So yes, that works really well for people depending on how they have Square set up, or whatever point of sale set up. And I'll just say that sort of extends to any other software or financial financial institution where some of your financial life lives, if it is digital, if it is online, we really strive to just bring that in automatically. We really want to reduce manual entry as much as possible. So point of sale, bank, line of credit, credit cards, anything that has an online presence, has an API, we do our best to try and integrate with that and bring it in, because the more manual entry you have, it takes longer and it's so much easier to make a mistake. So we're really trying to avoid that. So there are a few more pieces here. The biggest one that I want to talk about is sort of our payments tag here. Another principle of ours, which is similar to one of the bookkeeping principles I shared earlier, is that bookkeeping should happen in the same moment as the business activity happens. So the way that you kind of get stuck in this cycle where you're kind of waiting until the end of the week to do your bookkeeping and you have your big pile of receipts and you're sitting down, you're like, I don't want to do this, I don't remember what happened, is because you weren't able to kind of do that bookkeeping the moment the business transaction occurred. So that's why we've kind of completely integrated both bill pay and invoice sending into Ambrook. Now, if you're at a farmer's market and you have a point of sale and you're having to do like 50 deals in an hour, a point of sale is still going to be better for your workflow. But a lot of times paying bills, you sit down, do that at the end of the week, or if you're invoicing for wholesale or for a restaurant or something like that, this might be a solution that really works for you. And what I mean by that is when you can pay a bill directly through Ambrook, and I'm just going to kind of slowly set it up. You can open a bill. If you have a PDF or if you have just the printed bill, you can take a picture of it and drop it in here. It will read in the line items. You select your vendor. You apply your tags right here and now. I'm just gonna repairs, and here I'm just gonna add repairs and maintenance on the fly just because you asked. And I'm going to say this one is repairs and maintenance on something having to do with my carrots. I've applied those tags. And let's just make this 10 hours at $5. And I can actually pay this directly through Ambrook. So you have a couple of options. We can mail a check for you, kind of similar to many bank accounts will have this option to say, mail a check for me. You can print a check, you can do an ACH bank transfer, you can pay by card. You have all these options for you. But the nice thing here is you are paying the bill at the same time as you're doing the bookkeeping. So there's no separation there. You know exactly what you know exactly what this is about when you're doing it. Very easy to be in the right headspace to apply those tags and get it all done at the same time, so that really, as soon as you hit pay, you're done with that transaction, then it shows up in your ledger later, and those bills can be applied when you match them. Same thing works on the invoice side. You make a new invoice, itemize whatever it is you're selling to this person, apply the tags right then and there, and you can send it. I need to have an item. Let's do bananas, quantity 35. Very, very nice $2 bananas. And I'm going to send this to someone, and I give them options. I say, how do I want them to pay me? They can pay me as bank transfer, they can pay me the credit card, or I can tell them this is just an invoice, mail me a card, mail me a check, or pay me with cash. And this will actually send an email to them. It'll CC you. So everything's kind of clean and easy, and you never had to leave the Ambrook app for your entire workflow, and your bookkeeping's done already at the end of that process. Then to just zoom out a little bit, oops, save that draft, that's fine. To zoom out a little bit, you then get this nice little headquarters for your AR and AP where you say, okay, what bills do I have open to pay? Or on the invoice side, hey, who do I need to call because they haven't paid their invoices to me and I need some cash flow right now. So let me look at the open list here, call on down the line, and maybe get some folks to pay me their invoices faster than they might have done. So for many farm businesses, it kind of depends on the shape of them. For many farm businesses, this is all they need for all of their bill paying and invoicing needs right here in Ambrook, integrated into their bookkeeping. And I know I've got 5 minutes left, so I said I would leave time for questions, and I think we're going to make it. We've got two more tabs to show here, and they're both pretty easy ones. This is what we call the Ambrook wallet, which at first is really just another additional way where we try to make bookkeeping easier. You can think about this as an extra little spending account for your business, like a Venmo balance or a PayPal balance. It's completely self-funded, so there's no we're not offering credit here. You deposit money into this wallet, and then it makes it very easy to use that money to pay your bills, send checks, etc., like we talked about earlier. And it also comes with a spending card. So if you sign up with the Ambrook, if you put money into the Ambrook wallet, we send you a little Ambrook card. You can make as many as you want, give them to your employees, set limits on those cards. Here as an example of what that would look like, right? So this is a $500 daily spending limit. Maybe you hand it to someone who only needs to buy it for gas, put a $75 limit on that. This is just another little convenience feature. And the real killer reason to use this is kind of goes back to what I said before about making sure you have all the information about a transaction when it happens. And that's because if you use this card at Tractor Supply or at the feed store or whatever, the moment that that transaction goes through, since it's the Ambrook card, we just have a lot more information about it. We're going to send you a notification to your phone. You're going to click that notification. It's going to say, what is this? Categorize it, take a picture of the receipt, put everything in one place. And then even if you come back to this 6 months later, all the information that you need is already right there, right then. So that's a really nice flow, and it's really helped people, eliminate that shoebox full of receipts, eliminate that cup holder full of receipts, just a newer one I've heard about. We've all got it. And really just stop all that data loss that may be happening on your farm right now. And that's a great thing that we're excited to offer. And as we kind of grow as a business, we may be able to expand the services of this wallet as well. Also, it's important to say here that this is, for all intents and purposes, a checking account. It's sort of built on top of a bank, Evolve Bank. It has, sorry, clicked away there. It has a routing number, a checking number. It is FDIC insured. It is as secure as a bank account, though it is sort of, it might be a little bit different from what you're used to seeing in a regular bank account because it is kind of a Ambrook bank account. Yeah, just want to make sure that was clear that it's FDIC insured. All right, one last tab here with 3 minutes left. This is the funding tab. This is kind of when I said there's a few things that makes this sort of farm focused. The funding tab is kind of where we came from as a company. We started out with the premise that, we really want to help farms be both sustainable and profitable. How can we help do that? Well, there's all this money out there for farms from federal grants, et cetera, and we wanted to help them do that. So we started out during the pandemic. There was the coronavirus food assistance program. We helped thousands of farms get that. And then we realized, well, we can do this for a bunch of other grants, which is why we built the funding library. But then when we started trying to help people with those grants, we realized, actually, before you can even apply for these grants, you need to be really financially organized. You need to have a balance sheet at a moment's notice. You need to have income statement at a moment's notice. You need to know all of your financial information really well. And a lot of the farms we're working at just weren't at that point. So we said, let's fix that problem, because if we fix that problem, we get everyone on Ambrook, we get everyone's bookkeeping really tight and clean, then it's going to be super easy for them to apply to all the programs that are available for. And then on top of that, when you do get a grant or you do get a cost share, the example here is the EQIP cost share here. We make it really easy on Ambrook with the last tag here all the way to the right, the funding tag. It's just going to appear. There it is. We make it really easy to track where the money from the grant went for compliance purposes. A lot of these grants are reimbursement based. So what that means is they say, okay, we have agreed to give you the grant. We've agreed you're going to do this project. We're not going to give you any money yet. Go out, spend your money, do that project, and tell us what you spent it on. And when you do, we're going to reimburse you. So that's where this funding tab comes in. Really easy for you to say every time you spend the money, hey, this was my EQIP project that I'm spending the money on. So then when you go to the USDA, give them that list of transactions, they can reimburse you. So that's sort of a nice little thing that's built in there, since we have kind of this history with farms in the funding space, and we're excited to make sure that legacy lives on. I made it. 1 minute to spare. There's a lot more nooks and crannies of the product. Would love to hear more questions if there are any. Really thank you all for your time listening today. If you have any questions about this, either now or those of you who might be watching the recording later, you can contact us. You can contact Devin, and he'll send you to us, or you can contact us directly at hello@ambrook.com. Come check out our website, see what's going on. Would love to hear from you. Thanks very much.
Wicked. Awesome presentation. I don't need this, but I want this. Is it wrong to say that it looks fun to use? Like,
no, not at all. I don't know if Mackenzie's still on the call, but she would love to hear that. We're trying to make it delightful to bookkeep, and that is absolutely our goal. We want you to be, in the same way that some people open up their phone every day to play Candy Crush, we want you to open up your phone every day to love looking at your numbers and keeping your books up to date. That's where we want people to be, for sure.
so if I can just say briefly, the one thing that actually brought me into contact with Ambrook has nothing to do with this tracking software. And Atticus, if you don't mind, I'm going to drop in the chat a link to one of the most recent newsletters.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to put a plug for the Ambrook newsletter. I'm a sucker for newsletters. Some of them have too much, some of them don't have enough content, some of them have irrelevant content. The Ambrook newsletter is always full of good reads that are relevant to what's going on. It's pleasant to the eye. I just love it. Everybody should subscribe 100%. And I love the link farm.
Yes, absolutely. We have some great people working on the Ambrook research side. Jesse's our editor. Mackenzie is also big on that side of things, and we'd love to have you all follow us along, read on what's here's the link farm that Devin was talking about. We just kind of share out not just the stories we wrote this week, but also kind of the best stories we saw in ag across the internet. So definitely worth a subscribe there. And it is.
Sorry, I do have a question as it relates to the bookkeeping though.
Absolutely.
How often, if often, do you get farms that actually want to go back in time and upload past documents, past data to get them up to speed, get them up to compliance? And is that, what have been your experiences with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me jump back over to Ambrook as we talk about that.
Because a lot of the farmers, they reach out when they're in that mess, and when it's hopefully it's not too late, they can go back in and clean it up. But I think we're coming to a point where a lot of our farmers, they do have that shoebox, and they just dread trying to go back in time, plug everything in manually. So is there a way that you found to make that efficient? Or
yes, absolutely. Actually, we've had a couple of customers who have used us for that catch-up process. And what's nice about the way Ambrook works is we connect to your bank feeds, right? So as long as you've been, in the bank account for the past year, for the past however long you want to be catching up on, we're not limited by the day you sign up. You can go back as far as you want. And actually, one of our first customers started in about I think it was November of of last year, and that's exactly what she did. She needed to have her taxes ready to go for 2022. She just connected her bank accounts, uploaded every single receipt, went back, categorized the whole year transactions on Ambrook. And like you said earlier, it can be a delight to do. It's sort of you learn a lot about your business doing it. It's fast. It's perhaps a less frustrating than just going receipt by receipt, because you're not having to type everything in. You're more just like having to find, okay, I see this on my bank statement that has been brought into my ledger. Where's the receipt for that? Attach it. I know what it is, and move on. It kind of gives you a much more manageable to-do list than having to enter into a spreadsheet or maybe fill out a form that your CPA sent you. It's a more structured experience than that. Yeah.
where are you headed next? What's next on the chopping block for Ambrook? I mean, I know you've got to have something else good in your sites.
Absolutely. I would say we still have a lot of enhancements we want to do. I think we want to make that delight. We want to make these flows super simple, super fast. We want to make everything automated. We want you to kind of spend less and less time on the ledger, more and more time on those analytics, and we want to give you more for those analytics. We want to give you more reports. We want to give you everything you need. We want to have you be able to be proud of the tractors and the land and stuff on your balance sheet. So we've got some cool ideas going there. But yeah, always something new. And the best part about being part of Ambrook right now is we are listening to you. We talk to our customers every single day. They send us notes saying, hey, I wish that I had a field over here that could help me track what I'm looking for here, or I wish things were organized a slightly different way. And we really do take that feedback to heart, and we make improvements on a weekly basis based on what people are telling us. So come along for the ride. It's certainly a fun place to be.
It's cool to be a part of the process at that stage. I don't mean to keep peppering you with questions, and if anybody else has anything, please jump in. But can you just briefly talk about the onboarding process? If I were to come to you today, say, hey, I'm interested, how long would it take to get me signed up and actually rocking and rolling with the software? And what can folks expect through that process?
Absolutely. That's a great question, and I'm glad you brought it up. Right now, so if you signed our customer agreement today, which is just says, you want to be on Ambrook and tells you all about the pricing and all that stuff. If you signed up today, we generally schedule a few 30 to 45-minute sessions for the next couple weeks that kind of go through a setup process that really parallels the principles that we talked about earlier. And the biggest thing that we do there that we find to be really valuable is to talk about the chart of accounts. So in one of those sessions, we'll kind of say like, okay, what are your bank accounts? Let's make sure those are good. But in the second session, we really sit down and we say, okay, what is your business? What are the chart of accounts in your words? Let's make sure that's set up really correctly so that you feel very comfortable with it. What are your enterprises? Let's make sure those are of the right granularity so that when you're tracking things, you'll be able to answer the questions you actually want to know the answer to. And honestly, that is some of the most valuable conversation we have. And then, there's one more conversation after that, just to kind of check off any I's and T's once we've got your chart of accounts loaded in it, and then you'll be off to the races. So there's about, I would say, 3 weeks of onboarding time where we are kind of meeting with you every week intensively to make sure that we are set up for success when you get onto the platform.
You're going to hold our hand through it.
Yes, right. That's right.
Do you do any services after that, or is it all just self-managed by clients?
We have very strong customer support functions right now. So right now, and will be going forward. We have a little, actually, I'll just show you, I'm still sharing this. We've got this little support function in the chat. You can send us a message. We typically reply in 20 minutes. That's based on real data. We do typically reply in under 20 minutes. That actually right now, kind of like I said before, the feedback of our customers is so important that this actually pings every single person on the staff. If they opt in to be doing that, and I do, I see every message that comes through, and we make sure to get that answered, because oftentimes if someone is writing in to say, I don't understand how to do a thing, that's an opportunity for us to make that process that much better, right? And so it's something that we are really, really focused on. And even more than that, like with a couple of our existing customers, past onboarding, we are meeting with them weekly, bi-weekly, maybe just sitting with them and doing bookkeeping with them for a while. You're still in the early days in terms of this being available to farmers. So we really want to, while we can, spend as much time as we can with our customers. So joining now is a great option if you think you want that level of handholding in detail. Some people don't. Some people are like, give me the software and let me figure it out. That's great too. We love them as well, and they often send good feedback. But some people really want to be shepherded into the process, and that is certainly available at this point of the product. Yeah.
Can you support multiple users in here? So if you have maybe the owner and manager and maybe a assistant manager or something, they all log in separately?
We do. You were asking the best questions today because you're hitting everything that I forgot to talk about. Absolutely. So here is sort of the team page. You can invite as many people as you want. Oftentimes that is the owner, the couple of managers, staff members, accountant, bookkeeper, CPA, whatever it is. And we do have different levels of permissions there. So you can be an admin, which means you can do anything. You can be a manager, which means you can kind of do anything except for see the balances and the analytics for the whole operation, because maybe that's more than the owner wants you to see. And you can be a staff member, which basically just means you get a card, you can upload receipts, and you can tag your own transactions, and you don't see anything else. So we have some more things planned there, and you can kind of imagine that any little thing in the app can be toggled on and off for a particular permission set. But those are kind of where we started in terms of the most useful roles available. But yes, you can add as many different users as you want, and they can all use it at the same time. That actually works pretty well.
Cool. And then just one last question tag on to that. If you said users can upload files or documents, do you have like a
Yes.
landing zone where, like, let's say maybe you have a delivery driver, right? And he's going to make 10 stops. Oh, actually, maybe go the other way. Maybe you have someone you have 10 vendors coming to you, and they're all going to give you an invoice to pay them, but you're not there that day. Do you have a place for your managers to email that or submit that so you can go in later and tag them?
Oh no, sorry, I lost the very end of that sentence. Can you try again?
Sure. Sorry. Do you have a way for your users to send in files to kind of like a holding area or landing zone that you can go in later and take them and tag them and code them or whatever it is?
Yes, we do. So we have sort of the concept of oh yeah. Sorry, we have many variations of what you're asking about. Let me just run through what we do have. If you are a staff member and you bought something, that transaction is going to appear and you can upload the receipt.
Cool.
If you are a vendor, like if you are someone who is like sending a bill to the company, we have a place you kind of like start the bill process from uploading that bill. So yes, almost all. I think any situation where you have a arbitrary document that needs to be put into Ambrook, we have a place for you to put it. Okay. Basically. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, long-winded question. Sorry.
No, it's good. It's a nitty-gritty question, and it's absolutely a good question, and something we have some plans for even making that sort of repository more useful in terms of not just receipts, but what about tax documents and previous reports from unrelated software and stuff like that. We'd love to have Ambrook be the home to all of those documents, regardless of provenance or time, even if it's like not directly relevant to bookkeeping. Yeah.
Is there a threshold upon which the Ambrook software becomes, I don't want to say worthwhile, but worthwhile, efficient, whether it's gross sales or the number of enterprises that you found where maybe you had producers that wanted to try it and then they found they weren't really in need of it, so they opted out?
Yeah, I think this is a good time to talk about price. Ambrook right now is $100 a month flat. You get everything. There's not parceled out. You get everything here for that $100 a month, and that is sort of recognizing the fact that we're not just a bookkeeping software, but we're also offering payments and wallet and all of these other add-on features and analytics and reports. So, and it's kind of funny because we have found it not to be very linear in terms of size of farm to usefulness of Ambrook. We do have farms who are very small, but like sort of the hobby retirement, like 15 grand a year type farms, all the way up to farms in sort of like the millions to 5 millions in cash flows per year. And it really is about attitude. It's sort of, if you are a person who cares about saving time and you're a person who cares about sort of optimizing your business, then Ambrook is going to be a great tool for you. And it's not, it is totally fine to not be those people. you can have a farm for various reasons, and honestly, some of them might like Ambrook just because it's fun to kind of see your numbers in one place. But I would say, in terms of at what point should someone join Ambrook from a sales perspective or from an age of business perspective, we really have not found that to be to stop anyone. We have brand new businesses on Ambrook. We have very old business on Ambrook. We have small businesses. We have large businesses. It's just about do you care to get the questions answered about your business in this way?
And 100 a month could be a lot less costly than the downstream effects of very poor financial record keeping and bookkeeping and
Yes,
whatnot.
yes, exactly. And I think a lot less painful than what some have described as sort of like the 3-week horror of back and forth with your CPA at tax season when you haven't done anything all year, is a story we've heard from a lot of folks and who would pay a lot of money to not do.
Yeah, that's a very competitive price.
Awesome, glad to hear it. Yeah, love that feedback.
Any questions, anybody else? Louise, any final thoughts? I don't mean to call you
So
out.
comprehensive, and it really it really looks like a great system. Just one of the questions I have is, for our like certifications, like, certified organic and things like that, would we be able to, pay the fee whenever those come up? And then are we able to then upload the certification like right onto into this? Like, is that something that we would also be able to manage like other important documents along with like receipts and things like that? Is that available as well?
Yes, yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I was talking about earlier. So yes, absolutely. Whenever you paid the fee, you could upload the receipt, you could upload the certification, all attached there. Coming soon, we have just generic document management. So whatever you want to upload, you could put onto the platform and just have there for easy reference. I also want to point out that we actually have a few organic operations who use this funding tag for organic certification management. So I don't know which certification you have or you're talking about, but oftentimes they need to know, what inputs you used, where you bought them, where you sold, that kind of stuff. That is another use of the funding tag, is to say, this is my USDA organic tag, and I bought these inputs and they should be on my USDA organic report. That's another use of that that has been found to be compelling.
Yeah, it's a great feature.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's cool.
Well, I don't want to hold you any longer. Atticus, do you have any final thoughts? I'll send us off here.
No, this has been really great to come on and talk to the community at NOFA New Jersey. Really great to meet all of you, especially you, Louise, for coming out. Yeah, I guess my final thought is, if this seems interesting to you, if you have any questions, please just reach out. We would love to have you, even if you just like to have a conversation and see more. There's no commitment necessary. We'll show you more. We'd love to show you more. So reach out to me at hello@ambrook.com, or reach out to Devin if that's easier for you. And yeah, we'd love to meet you. So hope this gets widely viewed, and hello everybody out there.
Well, we are going to share it. So anyone who's viewing this YouTube, what will eventually be a YouTube video, check on the NOFA New Jersey homepage. We're going to put it in as a blog post. We'll also include it in our weekly email, and we'll include a roundup of information, links, documents, and the link to this video as well. Atticus, we thank you so much for bringing this service to us and giving us the walkthrough. It can really be an awesome tool for farmers in New Jersey and beyond. So we appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate all y'all's time as
Thanks.
well. See you next time.
Bye, guys.